The other thing is we are recording this because hopefully we can, be able to distribute it to folks that can't make the call. But we really appreciate everybody taking the time. We have about 50 people supposedly attending this call. So obviously we've stirred up some interest. So what I'd like to do first is introduce Nitin. Nitin and our relationship started probably the better part of 2 years ago. I think it was Tim Ryan's initial Comeback Cities tour where Nitin and I struck up a relationship, and he's been very involved, become a very strategic advisor and partner with us, and has some really strong familiarity with not just the ecosystem out in Silicon Valley, but what's developing here in the Midwest. So Nitin, I guess I'll turn that over to you.
Thanks, Bill. Hi, everybody. As Bill said, I'm one of the VCs here in Silicon Valley, which means I'm part of the majority. We started Unshackled Ventures in 2014, and so we're a relatively young firm ourselves. But in doing that, we're obviously learning from the best. So in the past, before starting Unshackled Ventures, I had the luxury of raising money from the likes of Andreessen Horowitz, First Round Capital, these firms that are relatively new, but have a very values-driven business model to their business. And so a big part of kind of what we're doing at Unshackled, which is focused on immigrant founders in the US, is around how do we support business acceleration beyond just money and immigration that we do. And that is what took me to the Midwest on these Comeback Cities tours that Bill was referring to. And in doing that, I've now done 5 of these Comeback Cities tours, spent a good amount of time in the Midwest on my own doing road trips, effectively to build enterprise relationships for our portfolio companies. And what I've also then been experiencing is there's a strong desire among a lot of these hubs or business hubs in the Midwest to attract and build entrepreneurial ecosystems of their own. The challenge, obviously, that I've seen is everybody's following the same business model, which is we'll invest local capital in local companies, which is great on its own, except it does not ultimately lead to knowledge transfer. And so when I met Bill and we started talking about what's kind of unique in Northeast Ohio, his perspectives around the industrial strength that is local was really appealing. And then we started working on, okay, so which of our portfolio companies make sense to be exposed to Northeast Ohio? And this playbook of Akron Fusion Ventures kind of became very, very real. Prateek's going to speak to his experience as a beneficiary of that. But from my perspective, I've met about 5 dozen VC funds that are kind of working on this regional approach in the Midwest and Southeast. And there's just really nobody that's taking this approach of let's use our present strength to create a better future. And the better future is not just funding local entrepreneurs, but inviting coastal companies to set up their offices in your region, to enable them to grow in your region, which obviously brings jobs to the region. And on the other end of that, enabling your local enterprises to benefit from the tech acceleration. So that's the journey we've been on, and I've had the luxury of introducing, I believe, 3 of our portfolio companies to Bill and Vicky, and Vicky's involved with one pretty closely on the healthcare side of things. I've so far heard great things from the interactions, Bill, and your team that have happened so far. Prateek can speak to that firsthand. But I personally believe that the reason I'm dedicating my time to this opportunity is because of the uniqueness of the approach that Akron Fusion brings to the table. Well, that good enough of an intro? With that, I would say that would be, if you can unmute Prateek, I would say, he would be the best person to kind of speak to as an entrepreneur who chose to open an oversubscribed round to bring you guys in. And obviously that's great for you and your LPs. but that only happens because of the value that you bring in.
Hey, Nitin, and apologies to Prateek and Bill if you're all right with it. This is Ben. While I have great signal, you mind if I chime in on the VC perspective?
Yeah, and
Go for it.
to kind of give some perspective on Ben. Why don't you talk about what's kind of unique about your fund, what's kind of unique about us getting involved, I think too.
Sure.
And as you said, why you have a good reception, and then we'll flip it back to Prateek.
Great. Well, nice to meet everybody. My name is Ben Bayat. So I'm originally from the area, born and raised in Pittsburgh, but spent many years in Northeast Ohio. I went to school in Cleveland, at Case, and then spent some of my early engineering years there. And then I've been out in the Bay Area for about a decade now, having done my own startup and been in venture for about 8 years, with a firm called NextGen Vencture Partners. And the premise for NextGen is that we believe that there's a network-driven effect to enabling scale for venture. And that's done by a technology platform that we've built in-house that connects us, the full-time investing team, our portfolio founders, and a network of venture partners that's about 1,300 strong currently. And when we think about the purpose for that network, it really is to augment the capability and capacity of a full-time team. And my own background from the Midwest, I had started the Case Angel Network with many of the same spirit of interest that Nitin was just talking about relative to knowledge transfer, bi-directional knowledge transfer. And about a year ago, was fortunate to get introduced to Bill and the team with Akron Fusion, and saw that could be an accelerator for this in the Midwest. How that manifests itself in the value proposition is that we invest in a lot of enterprise SaaS software as a service companies, and what you tend to see are these hockey stick curves of early revenue, but when you investigate it, it's early adopters from friends and prior colleagues in the Bay Area, maybe a few folks over in New York, but it's not really representative of how a company can grow from an exciting $10 million revenue startup to a lasting and meaningful IPO or acquisition liquidity event. In order to do that, you have to have a product and a customer base, or have a product that appeals to a customer base that's more representative of the entirety of the market. And so it's through Bill and Vicky and the Akron Fusion folks that we find that we have a kind of an unfair advantage, both for the startups that we've already invested in, those that we're looking at, and the pipeline of opportunities in front of us. Because that, I don't need to tell everybody on this line, but Northeast Ohio, the Midwest in general is very rich in mainstay 100+ year old companies that represent quite a bit of the market. So that's what excited me with connecting. And similarly, I think as Nitin, what you were about to tease with Prateek and the round that you guys opened up, kind of a similar scenario with Akron Fusion is that from an institutional investor standpoint, we have minimums to invest in our fund. And when I learned more about what Akron Fusion does over the last year or so, shared the story with my partners and kind of pressure tested it with some of our portfolio companies, we said that we wanted to make sure that there was a partnership here, and do so regardless of any minimums that we create for the fund. So happy to say that Akron is investor in our fund too, and been very helpful to the existing portfolio. And in this unfortunate yet unique time of opportunities that comes with something like coronavirus, we've even found opportunities to share deal flow together.
Thanks, Ben. Hey, I guess if there's any specific questions for Ben, ping me, but we can always collect them because I know you're going to kind of be hit or miss based upon your availability. And I appreciate you even pulling off to the side while you had a good spot and making sure you conveyed that.
My pleasure.
To reiterate what Ben said, we always knew we wanted to do a couple to a handful of fund-to-fund investments because we felt it would really help with our deal flow. It would create access points that we couldn't do on our own. But quite frankly, they weren't really on our radar screen to his point because their minimum was significantly higher than what our threshold was. So it was I think we were talking on an unrelated situation one day and we just kind of both had our light bulbs go off. So I do appreciate Ben going to bat for us, and I appreciate his partners allowing him to do so, and hopefully we don't disappoint. So hey, with that, Prateek, I'd like to slide it back over to you. And as I did get you unmuted. If you can kind of tell them a little bit about your company and the situation, that would be great.
Definitely. Hello, everyone. This is Prateek Joshi. I'm the CEO of Plutoshift. And a quick background about myself. I have pretty much spent my entire career building AI platforms, and along the way ended up publishing 13 books on the topic, mostly about how do we bring AI to in a practical way to the physical world, right? So that was because AI tends to get lost in the textbooks. So that's been a big focus of what I worked on over many years, and that was the core goal when we launched Plutoshift, is to bring AI to the industrial world, to the physical world. Right now companies that make physical goods, right? The operations work is still being handled using spreadsheets, right? Meaning it could be monitoring the performance, tracking energy consumption, checking the quality, right? Determining the cleaning schedule, and thousands more. And these spreadsheet workflows, they're expensive, right? Expensive because they cause errors and delays and oversights. It's just a very expensive part of the business, and that's where we come in, right? Plutoshift is a platform to automate these workflows so that the operations team, they have everything in a unified view, right? We leverage existing data collection systems to provide this, and at the end of the day, we deliver value to the business by reducing energy consumption to make those goods, right? Energy consumption, chemical consumption, water, so critical resources that you need to make the product, right? Right now, there is almost zero visibility into why something is happening on a real-time basis, and that's what we bring to the table. Now, obviously, we work with companies that drive our economy, right? Be it food and beverage, chemicals, oil and gas, manufacturing, power, renewables. And that's where this partnership with Akron Fusion made a ton of sense to us, because I was introduced to Bill last year by Nitin, who's on this call, and Nitin is also our first investor. And when I got to talking with Bill, I realized that the mission, right, the fund and the mission, it just resonated a lot with me, especially because of our business and the kind of customers that we work with. And two, Ohio, especially Northeast Ohio, it's a very strategic region for us, right? Just because there are many great industrial companies in the region, and also the type of relationships that we need to drive deals, bring more customers, work with more people. You just need to know the lay of the land, and that's what Bill brought to the table, is that even though we are headquartered in Palo Alto, California, right in the heart of Silicon Valley, and sometimes you just don't have the local network across the country, and most of our customers are in these specific regions. So when we started talking with Bill, it just resonated a lot with me, and the kind of value beyond capital, the kind of value that Bill and Akron Fusion can drive to Plutoshift, and that's why we decided to work together. And even before that, I'd say we already started seeing value because of the intros that Bill and his team started making, be it Smuckers, Lubrizol, a few companies that we really want to get to. And I think it just is a great way to establish a relationship. And now we are very, very excited because we have a very strong reason to expand and establish a strong presence in the region. And it's beneficial to actually both sides, because to us, it's a great way to expand our business. And as Bill mentioned, it's a way to bridge the gap. When I say gap, it's a knowledge gap, right? It's the operational reality gap, where sometimes if you don't live in a region, you just don't know how things get done. And that's been very helpful to us. And as we continue to work with Bill and his team, we will continue to see more value. So that's where we are.
Prateek's likely not going to say this about himself because he's a humble human being, despite living in or working in Palo Alto. He is an incredible entrepreneur. He's an author of 13 books on AI, and the team that he's built is because of who he is. There's significantly more successful people that you can say on track record, supremely experienced, and who had retired and came out of retirement to work for him. So, for a company like this to choose Akron Fusion Ventures as one of their investors, I think there's a great underlying aspect to it, which is VCs sell a very homogeneous commodity called money. And it's really, really difficult to sell money because everybody's is the same. So what we're really trying to differentiate ourselves on is what comes to you with money. Example, when we started Unshackled Ventures, we didn't know that we're becoming VCs, but the moment we realized that we're becoming VCs, the first thing we had to do is to figure out why would an entrepreneur take our money. So for example, when we invested in Plutoshift, Q1 of 2015, Prateek could have raised money from a lot of other funds with larger assets under management, bigger brand. But what was so unique about us that he would choose us? And that cycle repeats every time an entrepreneur is raising money, is they have the choice. Great companies always have choices. So as a VC, you have to think about why would entrepreneurs choose our money over everybody else's. As an LP, you have to think about the manager that I'm investing in, what's so unique about their strategy that entrepreneurs, and not the ones who have room in the round, but the ones that are every single time oversubscribed, why would they choose this fund? And I think that's kind of the context that is very important to understand, is as a regional fund, having the opportunity to get into the Silicon Valley and New York City deals and get into that alpha, and not just the deals that have spare room left, but deals that are oversubscribed, which means you really have to fight your way. Those are incredibly hard to win. So I'm saying that only because it's, from my vantage point, I see this because of the large number of funds that we work with all the time, of how founders are like, no, we don't even want this intro. We don't want to take this meeting because we don't see any value that this VC would bring to us. But when we mention this is what Akron Fusion does, here's who the people are, and this is the kind of customer access that you can get, they are immediately interested. So that context, I think, is really important to understand as you continue to, for those who are existing LPs, continue to support this fund, or if you're considering allocation, for you to think about that differentiation.
Yeah, and also I'd like to add one more point, is what Nitin mentioned is as you said, capital is fungible. Or maybe we are surrounded by capital here, but more than that, I see a lot of, when I meet and discuss with my peers who are running companies, a lot of times companies at early stage, be pre-seed, seed, Series A, the biggest driver is who can help us get customers, because revenue solves everything. And early stage deal, especially when mid to large companies look at startups, the cycles will kill them, right? So the biggest advantage is getting in front of the right person within a big company. That itself is a 6-month endeavor, because the global VP has no interest in talking to yet another startup, right? So I think it's bridging the speed and access, right, on top of capital. It's just a very attractive proposition for somebody who's who's kind of surrounded by a whole bunch of investors and startups, and who are just trying to look for that extra edge. Because as somebody who's running a company, right, I always think about, how do you get more customers? How do you recruit better talent? And how do you attract good quality investors, right? Like, my job can be roughly summarized in these 3 items. And every time we get somebody, be it a talent or be it a customer, we always see, okay, how do you leverage this partnership into something more? And the added value prop, as Nitin mentioned, Unshackled has done a great job of having that value prop the front and center. And same with Akron Fusion now is beyond capital. It's that the special sauce that help you accelerate. That it's really valuable.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. So I'm gonna I think go a little bit off script, but if there's any questions that anybody has, specifically while we've got these guys at our disposal, I think I'm gonna unmute everybody. If you have a question, say something. You can speak up, and if you don't, mute yourself again, please, if that's okay. And I've got a couple that were sent to me too. So, Mike, you popped up here. Were you going to say something? So, well, a couple things that have come up is some questions around, all right, where are we with the fund, right? So, from that perspective, our objective was to raise $20 million. That's what we're still shooting for. We're at about someplace between 11 and 12 right now, and by someplace I mean we literally have got 4 or 5 commitments over the last day and a half, so it's kind of fluid right now. We are pushing to close this round on the 30th, so next Tuesday. What we need are kind of strong indications of interest. We have a pretty benign LOI that says, hey, I'm interested, but it gives you some time then to pull it together. But we really push towards this close date and are trying to stick to it. As far as structure goes, we're a pretty standard fund, so it's a 2 and 20. We charge a 2% management fee, and we have a 20% carry. So once everybody gets all their money back, we all share it 80-20, 80 to you guys, 20 to us. So that's our incentive. We are a pretty significant LP ourselves. We have $600,000 committed to this endeavor, so we're putting our money where our mouth is as well. We also are pretty excited about our portfolio companies. We have a number of companies that are doing very, very well as a result of, or during this time period. And we have a number of companies that are poised to do very, very well when we come out of it. So we're fortunate that we don't have to tie up a bunch of our capital supporting these companies through this. They've run pretty lean and mean. But we also are excited because we got a lot of our capital in front of us, which means the opportunities are still there. We also are, up about 66% on invested capital. So we're not coming into this thing blind. We have portfolio companies. We have a number of them that have some, pretty significant track records. I actually have one who's on the line here, and Dan, I'll get to you if I can get through all the questions. So, somebody, hey, Ben, if you're still there, someone had asked if you could give a couple examples of how the power of your network and how it's worked.
Yes, hey, sure, and apologies for Little Mermaid in the background if you hear it. So, for example, one of our companies is a company called Everlywell, which is an at-home health test kit. They've actually been the first to have an FDA-approved at-home health test kit for COVID-19. And within 24, maybe 48 hours, we had that executive team in front of the COO of FedEx when they were figuring out their logistics game plan. So, that would otherwise have taken a week to 2 weeks navigating different org paths and trying to pierce the veil of corporate org structures that are set up to keep senior executives away from startups that might waste their time. So that's kind of a near-term example. The broad types of help that we like to focus on are early customer traction, talent acquisition, which is also a great opportunity in the Midwest, given the quality of engineering talent, sales talent, and as teams have become not only more open to, but frankly looking for lower cost geography teams in distributed teams, that's been a great source of opportunity in the Cleveland area.
Had myself on mute. Thanks, Ben. Hey, Vicky, I don't know. We've got about 7.5 minutes here, but Vicky, I don't know if you wanted to kind of share the Prime story and what we've done inside of COVID. I'm not sure everybody is totally familiar with your background, but there's been some very strategic things that we've benefited from through this process, and I think that's a good example of one.
Sure, I'll go quickly because then I think we also have the CEO of one of our portfolio companies, Wastebits, on the call too, and we can ask him just to give take a couple minutes just to share with everybody what he sees for the future of Wastebits and what his value, what he sees of the value coming from the fund. So one of the interesting things that we did, we had a company reach out to us actually through a connection of Nitin's. And Unshackled Ventures, and it's a New York company that's a biome company that's in the process. They've already created a device that can do rapid detection in a low cost manner for COVID. So long story short, we ended up started working with them, and in exchange for services, we've been able to get a certain percentage of equity in exchange for services over time, and also bring them into the fund with an opportunity to make an investment in this company, a sizable investment at their last strike round. So that's just a couple other examples of how the connections and the introductions to these different groups that we may not have ever heard of, who wouldn't have come to us if it wasn't for our relationships out on the coast. And so that's a good example of that, Bill. And I think then I would segue in and actually ask Dan Collins to maybe introduce himself and talk for a few minutes before we close out.
Go ahead, Dan. Sorry, muted and unmuted.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Dan Collins. I am the president and CEO of a company called Wastebits. I've spent about 30 years of my career in the waste and environmental industry, and several years ago approached Bill and Vicky and Mike Rademacher and a couple of the other partners there about an idea, a concept to help kind of solve some of the issues around workflow management inside of the waste industry, primarily in the manufacturing and in the industrial side of the business, where most people find it very surprising, but about 95% of the industrial waste that is being manufactured in the United States on a daily basis is not tracked, managed, or monitored anywhere, which is why there's such problems with illegal dumping. And so I had approached Vicky and Bill and like I said, a couple of the other partners around how do we solve this problem. And so my background in my 30 plus years in this environmental space, I've been on the post collection side of the business, which is the disposal side, working with manufacturing and industrial, which really kind of lines up to what everybody's speaking towards about the Midwest and particularly Northeast Ohio. I just happen to be national. And so, when it comes to networks and building a company and building, product, look, I've got a ton of experience. I got a ton of networks. In fact, I made a strategic introduction to a very large manufacturer, to the Plutoshift guys here a few weeks back. But one of the things I wasn't familiar with is around the entrepreneur side. How do you build a startup? How do you do those things? And so, I really felt like Akron Fusion Fund was a really good partner for me because they have that experience. Like I said, I'm a little bit different, where I don't need the strategic introductions to the players in the industry. Like my customers were, the top waste industry companies, including, Waste Management and Republic and all these big companies. They were all my customers. All these big strategic manufacturers, they were my customers. So, what I needed help with was how do we build a business? How do we build a profitable business that makes money and drives shareholder value? And so, I've had the pleasure working with Bill and Vicky and the Akron Fusion Fund really since we started the company. And look, there are times where we've had to lean on their expertise. There's times where we've been, short-staffed, and heck, Vicky came and spent a couple months with us, just kind of helping us, shore up some of the operational sides of our business and make sure that we're doing the right things. As an assist. And so, those are things that are really hard to measure. I can tell you candidly, like anytime, we're in a position where we want to do some growth funding or things of that nature, I only work through the Akron Fusion Fund just because of the amount of respect I have and the amount of effort that these guys have put into our company. I can't say enough great things about what they're doing. Anytime they come to me and say, hey, I have this portfolio company, can you help them with an intro to, XYZ? 100% of the time I'm going to do it. So, I think, a little bit, I'm sure most of the folks know kind of the reputation in the Midwest, like we're here to help each other. We do what we can, we pitch in, and I'm here to help these guys. I'm here to help any of their portfolio companies, and happy to answer any questions that anyone might have about the value that they bring.
Thanks, Dan. So, hey, I'd like to really close this out before the proverbial kickoff goes, right? So, I think if anything comes from this, the consistent message you're hearing is that, we really have a team effort approach. We all are working together. We're all very strategically minded as it relates to trying to have our portfolio companies align in certain areas so that they can leverage each other's expertise. And again, it's same thing goes for our LPs. Like, we really feel like we're creating a really special network of people that are going to get some really amazing things done. So for those of you who have other questions, I apologize that we got to book out of here, but just please feel free sending us an email. We're happy to set up a one-on-one call. We have a lot to do here in the next week, but we're prepared to get it done, and we're welcome to have any conversation that you guys want to have between that time period. So thanks again for everybody's time. Thanks specifically to Nitin and Prateek and Dan and Ben. We couldn't do it without any of you guys. So have a good day. Thanks.